Welcome to the Opportunity Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn from real buyers, sellers, and industry experts on the lesser-known growth opportunities to build their online business empires. We'll uncover tactics veteran online business entrepreneurs have used to build, buy, flip, and sell their way towards personal wealth. Sit back, grab a coffee, and get ready to uncover hidden growth secrets. The Opportunity Podcast starts now.
And welcome back to the Opportunity Podcast, your go-to resource for hidden growth opportunities throughout online business. We're your hosts. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Sarah, and thanks so much for joining us for our latest episode. So today we'll be speaking with Jimmy Huron, the lead business advisor with our sales team. Jimmy joins us to talk about the season of the seller, our phrase to describe the incredible rise of strong businesses demanding sky-high multiples. Large institutional investors are in fierce competition for these investment opportunities, and Jimmy's here to explain how sellers can ensure they get the most from the booming demand.
Yeah, that's right. But we don't want to give away too much now. So why don't we dig into the interview and see what Jimmy has to share? And then at the end of the episode, we'll go over some of the best listings on the Empire Flippers marketplace that highlight the growth opportunities we've learned about here today. So let's get started. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us again for another Opportunity Podcast. And today we have Jimmy Huron on the call with us. He is the Senior Business Analyst here at Empire Flippers. So thanks for joining us on the call today, Jimmy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's really nice to have you on the call. And Sarah and I are both really excited to talk to you about your role and position here at Empire Flippers. But why don't we give our listeners a little bit of an introduction to who you are and how you got started in the world of the online business space?
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be here. Always good to help Empire Flippers as much as I can and talk with you guys. So I started off at Empire Flippers about 2.5 years ago in September 2018. Before that was working in finance in a very different role than what others would expect, but I was working at institutional brokerage in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, helping American institutions invest in Vietnam and in the Vietnamese index. From there, while in Saigon, I met a lot of Empire Flipper employees and learned of this whole new different type of brokerage where you could work remotely, and it was all around online business. And when I decided to jump out of the institutional branch of that fund and try to make my leap remotely, I approached Empire Flippers and was able to get a job here and been here ever since.
Oh, it's really awesome to hear. And I'm sure Greg and Justin would really glad to hear about your experience in Ho Chi Minh City and Vietnam as well, too. It's a really awesome place. That's actually where Sarah and I actually started our training with Empire Flippers as well, as in Vietnam. So it's awesome to hear that. Well, why don't you also tell our listeners, where is it that you're calling from today as well, Jimmy? In the world, where is it that you happen to be stationed at?
So I am in Playa del Carmen, Mexico right now.
Okay.
A good place to avoid COVID and also be on the American time zones.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm calling from Brazil in Florianopolis myself, and it's kind of a weird change being 2 hours ahead of New York time. Because now I feel like I'm waking up in the morning and I have a little bit of extra time to do some work compared to, when I was stuck in quarantine and COVID times in Colorado. I was, waking up at 5 a.m. and I'm crunch time having that space in between the New York time. So yeah, that's awesome to hear. And where is it that you're calling from, Sarah?
Yeah, so I'm actually nearby Jimmy, but oddly enough, an hour behind in Merida. So weird thing on this Yucatan Peninsula, like I'm 4 hours north of Jimmy yet on a different time zone. So I quite liked being in Playa when I was actually on the East Coast. And now I'm suffering a little bit getting up extra early to sort of catch up with the East Coast, but that's okay. On this note of talking about where you are, Jimmy, I would love to know, because you said you wanted to make this leap to remote work. What has your life been like and the change been like now that you are working remote?
It's been great. I wouldn't want to go back to office life. I really enjoy being able to wake up, get my day started, and not commute to work. It is nice kind of having a co-working space or an office somewhere to just separate work and home, but I prefer just jumping right in after waking up, after getting ready in the morning. And then the flexibility just to live wherever you want. That's been, of course, the next best thing. And traveling the world while working and being able to sustain an income in some countries where that income can really provide a great life is an interesting experience that I hope more and more people get to experience after the remote life seems to be adapted by a lot more people out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was also nice, definitely, as the three of us have been remote since joining Empire Flippers, a strange advantage in the world of COVID. It was just another day at the office. As soon as everyone got sent home and had to go remote for the first time ever, we were basically already used to it. This is, the fabric of how we do work, which has been so nice because I watched a lot of people really suffer getting used to remote working if they didn't know how to do it or didn't like it. For us, it was like, I think it's really what helped us do so well in the past year when everyone else needed to adjust and figure out how to do work. It was just like completely fine.
I think there's something to it as well of just, there's the idea that you have to be pretty driven to wake up and just go ahead and go to work instead of having someone over your shoulder and constantly monitoring you. But that may just be some sort of fallacy. We'll see when they go back to the office, if they think, oh, I'd much rather be able to work remote and just figure it out on my own. I've enjoyed it. It takes determination.
Well, speaking of determination, because we've certainly seen a wild year, and I know definitely on the sales side, you guys have just done remarkable work in the past year, especially just trying to keep up with all the changes that we're seeing on the marketplace, which is what we'd really like to dig in on with you today. So you and I have spoken about this a little bit. We'll definitely try to introduce everyone to this, but we've been talking about this concept, this change that we're seeing, that this is becoming, the season of the seller, that this is a seller's market. It sounds really big and grandiose and exciting. So can you just start introducing me to that, what that means, this idea of the season of the seller?
I think that means that it is now officially a seller's market in particular areas on the marketplace. By that, I mean they can choose almost whichever offer they want. And the offers that are coming in on large, very attractive Amazon FBA businesses or that meet a particular set of criteria of a limited amount of SKUs. Those products have very high reviews with a lot of reviews over 1,000 plus, hopefully lower PPC costs and a good supply chain and a branded product. That combination is really driving a lot of buyers to the marketplace and trying to build up their own portfolios of legitimate Amazon FBA brands. The other types of businesses on the marketplace, we're still seeing multiples rise and buyers chase, but just not to the extent of Amazon FBA right now.
Maybe tough to totally narrow down. So FBA is becoming really attractive, but, sort of why is this happening and where is this happening? Can you tell me roughly, where these bigger players are starting to come in and buy FBA? Is it high six figures? Is it only seven figures? Just kind of walk me through that a bit.
Yeah, obviously it does depend on valuations. I should at least clarify my previous statement saying sellers get whatever they want. There is a limit that we're seeing. Is the largest businesses selling at the highest possible price of being around 4.5 years on trailing 12. And that's highly competitive. We don't really hear of any sellers being able to sell at that price anywhere else, especially going directly to buyers or even on other marketplaces. Now, the total costs, those range from the 6 figures to 7 or 8 figures. Obviously, those more attractive listings are going to be in the 7 to 8 figure range, just because those buyers within that range have the capabilities and the investment strategies to purchase the larger businesses.
Okay, so obviously we're having a ton of action happen on these sort of upper echelon deals, these 7, now 8-figure deals, which I know probably feels a little bit unbelievable sometimes that we're having quite the influx of 8-figure deals nowadays. Obviously, the bulk of the marketplace is not, 7 and 8-figure deals. We still have got a wide range. You mentioned earlier that multiples are rising, that sellers are kind of getting more of what they want out of buyers. But can we just dig into that a little bit more?
Yeah.
Walk me through, if you can, how these multiples are rising. If you have any rough numbers, we won't marry you to any, but maybe the kind of multiples we're seeing now versus, say, like a year ago.
You're right, not to just totally focus on the large part of the marketplace and specifically FBA, but even still, the lower tier prices, the 100,000 all the way up to $1 million, the buyer demand within FBA there is still very strong. So it's a very attractive model right now. For your standard e-commerce or content or SaaS type businesses, info products as well, multiples are nearly another 12 months higher or so than what they were last year at this time. So another year or so, give or take. And because we've seen just a huge uptick in buyer demand, and it felt as though sellers were leaving cash on the table with undervaluation. So as a marketplace, that's the last thing we want to do. As the sellers are our clients, we want to give them the best possible experience and best possible service. So with the multiples rising, we also saw buyers coming up and meeting those asking prices. And I don't know how many more multiple increases that we're going to do. We'll test it out at this level now. But as it stands, the buyer appetite is capable of hitting the multiples we're placing on a lot of these deals. So we'll continue to try and sell at where we're at.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. You're saying we didn't want sellers to feel like they were just leaving cash on the table. If the buyers are be raising multiples and the buyers are meeting up, we want to get the sellers everything that they are capable of getting in their deal. I think that's huge to note. Now, of course, we talked about this a little bit before one-on-one, but I think it's worth saying, yes, while buyers are meeting these higher multiples, like there is a caveat, especially when we talk about the sort of influx of private equity money that's sort of coming in and filling our marketplace. That doesn't mean that, say, every business is going to catch the eye of private equity. So maybe we can just dig into that a little bit and make a bit of a disclaimer here.
Yeah, you're right. But that goes sort of to what I was touching on earlier. The businesses that are within the 50,000 range all the way up to the $1 million range that are smaller and out of the eye of those private equity firms are still seeing plenty of buyer demand. This used to be the breadwinner of Empire Flippers, so we've always been catering to that buyer, and we still have plenty of high net worth individuals that are operating within that space, and they've actually adjusted their own buying strategy because they know they can't compete with those private equity firms in the larger listings. So they're looking to expend their own capital on more listings just at a lower price, just because they feel as they have a better opportunity of their bid being the winning offer in the circulation process on those.
Yeah, I can totally see that being a higher percentage of, as you had mentioned, their bid being more considered by these sellers versus competing with private equity or some of the larger investment buyers. And touching on that base, how do you feel that maybe deal structures and the way buyers, the smaller scale, are starting to structure deals that were not historically common? Do you notice there's a new trend in deal structuring where these buyers are looking to gain an advantage in one particular area over another? Or do you see any type of new deal structures come into the market that you just haven't seen typically in the past?
Yeah. And the more we dive in here, it's important to differentiate between where we're talking about in the marketplace. The environment below $500,000 or so is very different than above 500. We're going to see below 500K and all the way down to 20,000. We're going to see more offers that are buyers are willing to close faster. They are not going to request a long exclusive due diligence period. So essentially removing the business from the marketplace so they can run their own team through the business to ensure all the numbers are accurate, and then they would proceed with the sale. Below 500K, it's a much more competitive space on speed. And the deal structures are still around the 70% upfront, 30% paid out over time type of structure, which I say still is that's always been something that is a part of at least my time here at Empire Flippers. This is what we had always seen sellers willing to move forward on without any due diligence, because our process presses buyers to perform their due diligence as quickly as possible, as we're a little different than other marketplaces where we do not require LOIs or exclusive due diligence agreements for someone to move forward. So sellers appreciate that because there's a possibility a buyer goes into the exclusive due diligence period and doesn't purchase the business, and the seller lost the opportunity to sell to a different buyer. So everyone has to work faster below the 500K mark. When you get above 500K and you start getting into the realm of those private equity firms, they're going to ask for exclusive due diligence. Now, their timelines could be different, and this is a lever that they all pull as well. So some may come in at 3 weeks. And depending on the monetization type, for a content business, it could be an exclusive due diligence of maybe 7 days. But for e-commerce, FBA, they'd like to go through quite a bit more about the business. There's just more overhead, more about the suppliers, more on just their financial records. It's just a larger business instead of a content with affiliate connections or any sort of content links. So point being is a lever that you're seeing pulled is shortening due diligence. That's a differentiation between that and another competing offer. And then when you get into dollars, we're starting to see in the larger space, we're starting to see these buyers, their appetite just really show. where they're willing to take all of the risk off of the table. In that 70%, 30% structure, 70% upfront, 30% paid out over time, that 30% may be performance basis, where there's still a little risk left on the table that the buyer is not taking it all. Now, what we're starting to see up top is buyers need to differentiate themselves from the other players, and they want to bring down a really attractive FBA business, so they're willing to take on all of that risk from the seller. So they'll say, $3.5 million business, we'll give you $3.5 million upfront. And we need 21 or 30 days of due diligence. And then there's a possibility that somebody could say, we'll give you that upfront plus a performance incentive if the business stays flat over the first year with percentage growth thereafter, or there's just guaranteed payments of some sort thereafter. It's becoming very aggressive when you get into the deal structures on the attractive listings. But across the board, it's all becoming just much more of a seller's market, the season of the seller, which you could also tie to, I'd say, the season that online business proved that it's pandemic proof. You're seeing more buyers realize this is an asset class that isn't going away anytime soon, and it is capable of withstanding some of the worst of economic crisis.
Yeah, that's a really solid point that you bring up as well, Jimmy. And it's interesting that you bring this up on how it's becoming such a competitive market. It's becoming more aggressive in this marketplace. And something that we bring up quite often is, beating the wire race, is for buyers, beating the wire, the money getting into the account to hold that business. If they're not doing exclusive due diligence on some of the higher tier businesses, beating that wire race or beating, the competition to make sure you get those funds in the account before someone else does is ultimately what it will come down to. But that also brings up something that I'd like to touch base on for sellers on that front, having to do these deals in a more timely fashion or in a quicker pace. What advice would you give to sellers that are looking to get the most out of their exit or most from their exit of their, business, whether it be Amazon FBA or a content-based business, to make sure that they're still getting the most value out of their exit, even with maybe a faster deal taking place?
Come to a marketplace.
Yeah.
Come to Empire Flippers. We've got an entire exit strategy team there to help shape your business and give it the best valuation when it hits the marketplace. Our seller side team works with sellers we just had a colleague of mine had been working with them for 2 years before he listed with us to get everything prepared in order to give him the best valuation. Now, we of course don't want that to be every case, but the idea there is we're dedicated to sellers have as high of an exit as possible. So 1, the seller side team. 2, the competition within the marketplace. As we're talking about, there's a ton of demand. So if a buyer approaches a seller directly and off market, the seller doesn't necessarily know where their value stands. They don't have a benchmark. They don't have a broker there to tell them, no, this is where you should be valued, as this is where the market's set. As far as intangible parts of the business, automating it as best as possible. And if you can't automate the processes, hiring VAs. So the idea is limiting the amount of time that a new owner would have to spend on the business. If you do need to bring in extra help or employees, there's obviously additional cost that's going to hurt the bottom line. It will absolutely help the sale move faster if a buyer can plug right in and start operating the business with the employees there along the way, but not too many. 1, 2, 3 VAs or so is always what people are looking for, not a ton of overhead with a large staff.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah and I have both spoken with many buyers and sellers on this podcast, and that's kind of one thing that they're always looking for is not to have a full-time job of managing, 10, 20 VAs. They're looking for something that's going to be effective yet manageable, easily manageable anyways from their end. Now, on the subject of buyers trying to beat the wire race or make sure that the deal is going quickly, and sellers are doing the proper exit planning, coming to our marketplace, talking with the business analyst, making sure that they're going to get the most out of their exit. What about these larger acquisitions that maybe a solo entrepreneur, a solo buyer, how are they going to be able to compete with some of these larger institutional buyers or maybe even private equity when it comes to acquiring 6-figure, 7-figure businesses? How can they secure these deals? And when going up against these types of buyers, and from your experience, what you've seen in those solo entrepreneur, buyers that are coming into our marketplace?
They're shying away from the 7-figure mark these days. What's differentiating those types of buyers from the private equity firms, the large portfolios, especially within Amazon, I know I keep going back to this, But let's say you've got two deals in front of a seller and they're both for the exact same numbers, exact same due diligence, but one says I need 40 to 50 days of seller assistance and the other says I've got an entire team that's been operating at a high level on Amazon businesses for the last 2 years. So we don't need any seller assistance. And that's starting to show as well. The experience that these PE firms are coming in with is really setting them apart. If it was a solo entrepreneur that had a full team and was an expert in whatever model or monetization type they're coming into, that's going to help. But when a solo comes in, or a high net worth individual, if you will, they're more operating below the $1 million mark, focusing on something they are already an expert in, which I assume most would in general, but focusing on whatever you can to sell to the seller that you are capable of operating the business at a high level without much of their assistance is going to be a big help.
Yeah, it's something that is always really a great value to hear as well from you, having this experience, talking with people that are in the front line, in the trenches, doing this as well. And on that subject as well, what do you think, Jimmy, like as far as the future is concerned for our marketplace? Do you see more of these institutional buyers, more private equity firms buying up these larger 7-figure businesses? Do you see maybe them going after some of the smaller acquisitions to kind of spread out the portfolio? What is your take on the future and the marketplace as a whole?
I think we're going to really start to see another level of growth. To kind of pivot off of what we were discussing in just the last topic of how can solo entrepreneurs compete with private equity firms, there's going to be another wave. And there's always a consistent flow of new buyers that are completely new to online business. I think that will continue to grow. And there's plenty of space for them to purchase a business and learn about the process, and sellers that are willing to provide extra seller assistance. So that's not going anywhere. And I think that's going to continue to improve. I don't think the capital flowing into Amazon acquirers or private equity firms that have sole strategies to purchase online businesses is going anywhere either. We're starting to see venture capital firms build out their own funds to invest in Amazon or online business funds. So it's not as though they're going out and sourcing their own capital from different types of investors or different types of banks. There's literally dedicated funds to source them. And it's increasing the amount of capital that's already in this space. And on an industry scale, it's tiny. I mean, right now, I know I keep going back to Amazon. There's about $1 billion or so of capital raised between a handful of maybe 20 funds. And to us, that's massive. To any other type of investment industry, that's nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. And I think that's just only going to rise with the different case studies that we see and all of the success that everyone starts to preach about owning an online business. More and more of a common asset class.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a great take, Jimmy. Like, it's so exciting to hear you talk about it. Like, a few major funds coming in and fueling the massive transformation in this space. It's kind of like a little revolution happening somehow along for the ride. So it's great to have you come on and to paint a picture of that, because I think for a lot of people, everyone usually has their head in their own world and not realizing that we're in the midst of a revolution in our own industry. How can you sort of jump in and ride this wave and get the most out of it you can? You have to be paying attention. So it's good to bring some light to all that. Before you go, we usually wrap up with just a couple rapid fire questions. So I was kind of wondering, what would you say is the secret sauce to success when buying a business with all the changes in this space? I know that's something that we've talked about, but if you could deduce it to any one thing, what would you say is the secret sauce?
When in the marketplace to purchasing a business, the secret sauce is speed. Setting an alarm for 10 a.m. Eastern every Monday and knowing you need to get on the marketplace as quick as possible to look at the new listings before the rest of the market does, and setting a call with the sellers. That is now becoming the key component on the marketplace, and everybody's starting to do it, to where if you're talking to a seller 5 days after he's listed, you are way in the back. There's plenty of people that already spoken to a business that's attractive, and it very well could be sold by that 5th day.
I think that's an amazing point. 5 days might have been enough time, a year ago, if that's when you were buying, but not now.
Yep. Not now at all. We have more people asking how can they get information faster. And we do not have any sort of preview list for any type of buyers. And the only thing we keep telling everyone, and we've always said it, is set an alarm.
Excellent point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. Making sure you set that alarm every Monday is one thing that we do have many buyers as well, constantly telling us they're waiting and looking for their email to show up in their inbox. So it's a really great mention as well, and great tip for anyone out there that's interested in purchasing or acquiring a business. Make sure you are always checking that email. Next rapid fire question for you, Jimmy. So what are your top 3 tools, books, or resources that you've used in your business life to help you kind of grow and expand your knowledge base?
Favorite book within business is Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's a really good read just about the successful, how some companies become amazing and really hit what he called great status versus some that have always been good. So how do you make that leap? And it gets into just the differences between leadership, accountability, responsibility across all different types of companies. Great book. And then I'd say experience for me. I kind of dove head on into financial institutions into Vietnam. I didn't have any experience there. Somebody hired me from being a manager in a restaurant in Vietnam. And it turned into learning the market and understanding it well enough to know that I didn't necessarily want to do it for the rest of my life, and then dove into online business. And I didn't know anything about online business when I joined Empire Flippers. It's all about, I guess, dedication and just believing that you can do it. So maybe that's a cheap way out of just saying Empire Flippers has been a great way for me to learn about a lot of things in this world.
I completely agree with you. It's in having that first world or firsthand experience too is ultimately kind of gear you or push you into the direction that you're ultimately meant to go down, right? You had no idea what was going to be happening until you started working with Empire Flippers. And now all of a sudden you've got these doors open, and I completely agree with you on that as well too. All right. Now, so let's step away a little bit from the business talk for 1 second. So the final rapid question for you, what has been the funniest or weirdest moment you've had while working online?
Funniest or weirdest moment while working online? Can I make comments about Greg Elfrink?
Yes, you can. They're all
Always.
accepted. They're 100% accepted and welcome.
When I first started here, I knew Greg before coming into Empire Flippers. Brandon, you had mentioned the Saigon connection, and that was actually a reason why I came in. It's the relationship I had with Greg. And when I started here, Greg would take advantage of just, I don't know, for first timers coming into Slack and working online and being remote, and just send messages of saying, hey, Sarah needs your help. Can you message her? Out of nowhere. And Sarah, of course, didn't need my help. Or if he knew you were in a call with somebody, he would say, hey, can you ask Alex, what he's doing on Friday? Because I was supposed to hang out with them. And then you tell him, and Alex like, no, Greg, I wasn't supposed to hang out with Greg at all. It's just Greg Elfrink he's a clown. And that would probably be one of the funnier internet experiences I can think of, or at least working online.
Yeah. That's great.
Absolute troll of the company. Yeah, he's trolling. He trolls everyone on Slack, and then he trolls the entire industry on his own Facebook and or his own LinkedIn. Yeah. So yeah, if you want some laughs in online business, go follow Greg Elfrink. Yeah. We didn't plan for this to be a commercial for Greg, but now it's a commercial for Greg. Awesome.
All right.
Well,
yeah, that's great.
Thank you so much for giving us some of your time and sticking with us today. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you, and just so exciting to see what the industry is going to do this year, and definitely how you guys are going to tackle it. We are pumped to be working behind the sales guys, sort of leading the charge there. So thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and always happy to hang out with y'all. And a plug in for the marketing team. We wouldn't be here without y'all either. So you bring in a lot of leads for us to work on. So I appreciate your help.
Same here. Yeah, it's
through that
it's
and Greg's trolling.
Yeah, and,
yes,
and Greg's trolling. Yeah, that's definitely brought the most.
Awesome. Thanks again, Jimmy.
Thanks, guys.
Hey everyone, as promised, now that we've wrapped up this episode and covered the different aspects of selling during the FBA Gold Rush, we wanted to connect you with some of our best listings in the Amazon FBA and e-commerce space. So first we have listing 49649, which is an Amazon FBA business in the sports and outdoor niches. So what is really great about this listing, and something I wanted to bring up in this podcast, was that the Amazon Seller Central account has 32 SKUs, and also it has a domain and site that comes included with it. So it's great that it already has an additional channel outside of Amazon FBA, bringing in some marketing traffic. Also, what's included with this listing is an email list with over 4,300 subscribers, Facebook account, and it does also come in with trademarks for the logo and the wording of the brand. So this is really a crucial element to this business, that it has kind of built a moat already around this listing and its brand itself. So you wouldn't have to necessarily be too concerned about competition coming in and taking over some of the aspects of the business, or maybe even some of your traffic, having some additional features that are included. The seller spends currently around 4 hours per week managing the inventory levels and responding to customer inquiries. So if you did have a team of VAs or perhaps some operations on the back end from your own experience with dealing with VAs or outsourced help, you could minimize that time required to manage this business even further. What's also great is that the PPC ad campaigns for this business are only used occasionally. So if you happen to have a core skill set in Amazon or PPC in general, you could definitely come in, pick up this listing, and you could also optimize the PPC campaigns and maybe run more targeted ads to your audience and maybe get better conversions through the different PPC campaign portals. Furthermore, the enhanced brand content and the engaging videos that come included could further be optimized to grow this business and offer some even greater potential with optimizing the conversion rate optimization, or CRO, on this general business model too. Yeah, so what do you think about this listing as well, sir? Is this something that you could see some great potential moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I like what you were saying there about potential, because it's like, that's really what I'm getting from the listing that I picked out, listing 49133. It's an Amazon FBA and e-commerce business in the beauty niche. So this one in particular, what I like about it is it's already got, a diversified set of income streams. I mean, it's majority Amazon FBA. You have a WooCommerce part of the site, and it's only 4% at this point, but it'd be easy to scale down the road. I think another thing that I like about it is that just based on the niche and the fact that there's already some built out social media presence, I think there's just a lot of room to build out more of a social media following. I mean, beauty is like a big deal, and there's already a strong presence on that on social media. So if a buyer felt so inclined, they could take this over and just kind of run with it. And then for those who really love to optimize the business and optimize operations, right now, the seller is running the business. A lot of it is happening, just through their own accord and their own work. They do have one employee, but right now they're doing a lot of the daily operations and customer service. And I think there's just room here to take a lot of that off the seller's plate or the owner's plate, should the buyer want to take this over, and maybe get more VAs or more people to help run the different aspects of the business. I think one thing in particular that it has, it's great. It's got a 15K subscriber list. So there is already a sense of audience around this brand. And there's also 2 trademark brands included in this sale. So I just think there's a lot of runway here to optimize on one side and to build off of what already exists. And I think it's already a strong foundation. So pretty cool. Other than that, I think that basically wraps up our podcast episode for the week. So thanks so much for tuning in. We do hope that you've gained some valuable insight on the opportunities digital acquisitions offer. Click the link in the description or visit empireflippers.com/marketplace to learn more about these businesses or their listings currently live on our platform. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a comment and subscribe to this channel for more great content that'll be released soon. Until next time, we're your host. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Brandon, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Opportunity Podcast.